Hi, everybody. I'm back again, this time to talk a little bit about the week of the 8th of March. So today is the 8th of March, and it's a day when Venus meets up with Saturn. So as you can see, I'm just doing this live now. So you'll see Venus here with Saturn. In the next hour or so, they conjoin. And, and this starts off a new synodic cycle between the two of them. And they meet again on the 7th of May next year because Venus is going to be retrograding between Scorpio and Libra later this year. So that slows her down a little bit. So 7th of May. Now, when we have Venus with Saturn, we can say that there's a restricted passion or a restricted desire. And that's ruled by Mars, which is very close to the North Node. And all of these things are happening around the same time that Jupiter is about to station. So the Jupiter station is a foundational theme of this video, but we can't ignore all of the other things that are happening around the same time because there are so many. It just creates a lot of noise, let's say. And again, I'm going to reiterate messages I've already communicated, which is to not get too caught up in the noise because you get yourself all emotionally entwined in a particular event, and there are going to be 100 of those every day, if not more, and it's not going to give you any indication of the outcomes. So let things settle, and especially between now and April, you're going to have that. It's just going to be like this the whole way through, especially till the middle of April or even till the end of April, because things are happening really, really thick and fast as we go through a lot of new cycles. So I'm going to try and call in some of the cycles that are overlapping here and help you see some dates going backwards in time and to understand a little bit how that all might apply to you. And of course, we'll do that sign by sign in the second half. I want to remind you that Monday in astrology, or how we're affected globally, is always a little bit less positive, you could say, less easy to grapple with than individual astrology. So if you can't stand the heat, just get out of the kitchen now and go straight to your sign. Because a lot of what is happening right here and now is not going to be easy, even though on the surface of it, there are some really nice aspects. So exactly as I'm doing this video, we have this grand water trine, and the trine is between Mercury retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, or still retrograde for another 3 days, and then the moon itself, which is actually not in good dignity in Scorpio. The moon is a timekeeper, and it'll make events kind of noticeable, let's say, in the life of people, or in the events. There's a timing that is more reliable amongst the faster moving planets like the moon and Mercury, and then to a certain degree Mars and Venus as well, but especially the moon is a real timekeeper. And here, as I've already mentioned, moon is going to be approaching the opposition to Uranus, which makes a T-square to the events of the 17th of February, when we had the first eclipse at the end of Aquarius. So even today, the 8th of March, if you're watching it on this day, there can be some really volatile events that happen, especially as the moon is not in strong dignity. It's ruling Jupiter. It's ruled by a Mars, which is coming up to the North Node, and there's going to be a lot about that in a minute, which creates a lot of angst and heat and things that are happening in ways that are urgent or emotional or deeply impactful that are not necessarily in everyone's best interest, because we're looking at things from a lens of confusion. And this is the context of the Venus conjoining Saturn, both of which are in poor dignity, neither of which are comfortable in Aries, because Saturn rules the opposite sign of Libra, so it's in detriment. And Saturn is the exaltation ruler of Libra, so it's in fall, and Venus rules Libra, so she's in detriment. And that doesn't help that they're also very close to Neptune at this time. So what I can expect with the rulership of this super agitated Mars, which is also ruling the moon, which is the emotions and the public and so on, I think we're going to see a lot of new, hastily pasted together alliances in the world, things that are going to be happening where there are going to be alliances of convenience, not necessarily because everybody's on the same page, or at least in terms of long-term viable alliances. So what might happen is we see these alliances coming together now during wartime, simply because things are so chaotic. People are needing to find new friends or what they could consider allies. And then with the passage of time, as Venus starts to square Saturn, and then eventually as she is going to be, that'll be when she's in Cancer, and then eventually as she goes past the retrograde cycle and then back to join Saturn next May, 7th of May, those alliances will probably no longer hold, or they will show the cracks in such a way that they need to be redesignated. So this is the state of where we are. Things are transient. And this, again, on an individual level, is not necessarily the case, but let's say if you're trying to put something together in a relational dynamic, this would be a very heated time to be starting a new relationship. I would definitely also avoid clashes if you're within a relationship. If you're in a relationship at the moment, take a step back and notice for the whole of this week how you're feeling and deal with the feelings first before you engage in some kind of discussion, or especially if you're in a state of agitation and there's an argument or something coming up. Just step back, hold your counsel, and don't get involved in things that can be delayed till later. It's just not an easy time right now. So with that cheerful news in mind, what is happening, and that's quite supportive in general, is again this notion of the trine that is really strong on the 8th, which is between Mercury and Jupiter. So that's very favorable for finding, again, agreements or finding a place that a way of working through things. But equally, it's retrograde. Mercury is retrograde. Jupiter is still retrograde at this time, and therefore not likely to hold, or there's going to need to be a revision, and they will come back to a trine when both of them are direct in a couple of weeks. So Jupiter this week, and then Mercury after the 20th, as it starts to move back through Pisces, will trine once again back to Jupiter. And I'd say that will be a time for consolidating whatever it is that you're creating right now. Get Mars well away from the North Node, unless you're planning battle, depending. And notice that, of course, the Sun is also still in a strong trine to Jupiter, and that's also favorable. Again, it's almost 18 degrees today. It's again the trine to the Moon, which is very favorable, but the Moon itself is not in great condition. So again, the things are unstable. So just don't plan things to last without a realization that there's going to be a lot of tweaking, to say the least, as you go forward. And again, we'll look at these things in a personal lens as we go through sign by sign. So when the next time that Venus and Saturn come together on the 7th of May, it's going to be at 21 degrees of Aries. So that's going to be interesting too, because Jupiter will be in Leo. There'll be a trine to that. So I think that can also be better, let's say, in terms of lasting bonds or lasting relationships, simply because there's more support coming from a trine from Jupiter. That's still mitigated because at that time, then the South Node, the South Node will be in Leo. So these are tricky days. There's no two ways about it. These years are tricky years. And this intensity is, as we've been building up from the time basically Pluto ingressed Aquarius, 2023, we're peaking really strongly now. 25, 26, 27, these are real peak moments of chaos and change, and there's just no way around that. So focus on yourself, focus on what you need to take care of yourself as much as possible. Today is, I'm trying to say this without sounding cynical, this is International Women's Day. I always find that really hard to get behind, because it's just doesn't seem to have any effect on the quality of life for women. Perhaps one of the things that you might find that you can realize at this time is how you've been played around the state of women in Iran, and how you're supposed to be so concerned for the state of women in Iran and lobbying for them and so on. And maybe you'll realize that that was part of the whole propaganda machine, getting you all emotionally behind anger with the regime in Iran. Again, that doesn't mean that the regime was positive. I'm just saying that you may wake up to the fact that you've been played, and especially a week after the U.S. bombed. It's the U.S. themselves consider that they were probably the ones that bombed the 167 schoolgirls that died and the volleyball players that went along with them. So you can pretty much kiss that notion of women's rights as part of this pattern of change, or the desire for change, and around being a part of that story. Just wake up to the fact that propaganda is a constant in these times. We've spoken a lot about that in terms of the Pluto and Neptune's sextile, and I spoke to Ann Barr about that in a separate video you might want to watch if you haven't seen that. And you can imagine that propaganda is going to be off the charts at this time, because also by the time we get Mercury backing up into the North Node, after Mars is done with it, Mercury meets up with Mars and then backs up into the North Node, and it stations on the North Node. So I think we have to really be careful to remind ourselves that, again, just like with Venus and Saturn, be careful that you have the sense that you're on a particular side, or supporting a particular side. This is 5D chess. There's so many micro alliances and things that are not clear. Nothing is black and white. It's not the US against Iran, or even the US Israel against Iran. There's so many more complicated alliances that are going on behind the scenes here. You might think you establish one reason for things, but if you're fixed on one thing being true, you'll be missing a whole bigger chunk of every story. Just like humans are super multifaceted and complicated, war and international relations and geopolitics is impenetrable, certainly in the moment, because you need to be able to parse out over time what was really, really going on. And that we're still parsing out things around the Second World War that were not known for decades, and that we're only just discovering even in the recent years. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot that goes on under the radar that we don't understand, and we can't understand. So separate yourself out from the drama of the real world. Do what you can in your life and in your corner to keep things sane. And then don't get too especially emotionally involved in what's going on, because it will completely sever your connection to rational thinking. The prefrontal cortex shuts down when you're emotional. It puts you in your reptilian brain, and it means that you're reactive. And this is the week to beware of that, because Mars on the North Node is quite dangerous. It's just not it's not an easy transit. What I want to do is pull up the last time Mars was, let's say, in the opposite end of the cycle. So Mars was conjunct the South Node last summer, 21st of July. All the dates and times that I'm giving you are here in the upper left corner, and also universal time. So you'll see that's always going to be the baseline for what I do here. Dates and times are given in universal time. So here what we have is Mars at 19 Virgo on the South Node. And it was at that time square Venus in Gemini. Now, Venus in Gemini also has a lot to do with potentially superficiality and duplicity. And again, that's not you as an individual. If you have Venus in Gemini, I'm just talking about the archetype. And when we're looking at global politics, we also want to look at things from a slightly tinged negative aspect, because that's just the way it goes. It is the more likely end of the stick. So here we have Mars in a square to Venus, and Venus is approaching the square. That makes it even more powerful. So applying squares are when things are more challenging, and Venus square Mars is tension. So Venus is squaring the nodes. Mars is at the South Node. We had the first sort of very, very close meeting up of Saturn and Neptune. So that was already happening. And this is roughly where we're finding the two planets, although in a reverse order right now. And also we had our first foray of Uranus going into Gemini. We even had the moon there in Gemini at that time. So there's a whole lot that is happening now that was already kind of triggered last summer, last July, that was ongoing because Mars was already in Virgo already weeks before this, and that was in line with also the 12-day war, 12-day war of Israel attacking Iran last June. And so this also plays very strongly into all of that story. Um, Keep in mind that Venus is roughly at the degree of the U.S. Mars in the U.S. house of relationship. So Gemini is the seventh house for the United States chart, the Sibley chart. That's the Independence, the Declaration of Independence chart, 5:10 p.m. Philadelphia. And that's the chart that resonates most strongly with events. And here we have this square. I pulled up a couple of things that were happening around that time, but really most of them were to do with the resolution, so-called, of the 12-day war, which, remember, was ended after 12 days because Israel asked for a ceasefire because they were getting creamed by Iran. It's going to be worse for them now. There's no disputing. You will hear on American media, mainstream media, that they're winning, they're bigly winning, and it's not true. This is going to be a protracted war, and the U.S. just does not have what it takes. And if the U.S. doesn't have what it takes, Israel definitely doesn't, because they depend heavily on them. In another video, I'll do the charts and actually show how these different charts are being lit up by these events. I also wanted to mention that remember the war in Ukraine? The war in Ukraine is still going on, and I will do more charts about that in a different video. And so this is also factoring into these times, because the war in Ukraine was also, at that time, back in the summer, there was, again, a lot of negotiation around that war and trying to find ways around it, and trying to find ways to work through agreements. And especially as we go then from the conjunction of Mars on the south node to then Mars on the in a square to the nodes. If you remember, that was last November, and Mars was squaring the nodal axis at that time from 14 Sagittarius. Remember, that is very close to the U.S. ascendant, which is around 12 degrees, 13 degrees of Sagittarius. So we've gone from Venus on the seventh house connecting to Mars at the Mars South Node conjunction to Mars being on the ascendant at this time. So you can feel the U.S. is just unrelentingly moving in the direction of war, despite whatever rhetoric is being spoken. And here we have so that conjunction, the square now is the closing square of this impact. The Mars is moving towards the North Node at this point, and where it is this week. And I just called up a couple of really important events that are really still very active right now. This was at that square when the U.S. was talking about a new peace plan for Ukraine on Trump's terms, the U.S. peace plan, again, under the delusion, because this is quite delusional what's going on right now, the delusion that the U.S. has any say any longer in what's going on. There's a total lack of awareness of how things have changed in the last couple of years, and I would say actually since the U.S. Pluto return. The status of the U.S. has disintegrated and degenerated ever since 2023. Very, very rapidly. As soon as Pluto crossed that, Pluto, the U.S. Pluto, and especially even the progressed Pluto, which is 29 degrees of Capricorn. So we're looking actually back to 2022, 2021 even. And that was, of course, the beginning, February 2022. I think it was the 24th of February 2022 was the beginning of the Russian invasion into Ukraine, which was, we know, entirely provoked. And again, I'll come back and look at charts. I have a theory, which is that the US-driven coup in the Maidan, what's known as the Maidan coup in Ukraine, is the beginning of the end of the US status. And that was from November through February, so November 2013 through February 2014. And so we'll look at those charts and how they impact the US Sibley chart. And if you're interested in doing that on your own, go and look for those dates and do that. Look at that, and you'll see how it really calls in a real rapid degeneration of the United States, which tracks geopolitically. Um, the other really interesting thing is that on the 23rd, so when these events happen, they're not just a bang one off. It's not like a lunar passage, which is really a few hours, but especially with Mars, there's a buildup as it's becoming close to a square, coming up close to a square. And that would take a couple of days. So we're looking really from the 20th of November all the way through till it starts to taper off or separate from the square into, let's say, 27, 28 November. But as the 23rd of November, there was a G20 meeting, and those talks were in Johannesburg and boycotted by the United States because of the South Africans taking Israel to court for genocide and charging, I think by that time also Netanyahu and many others in the Israeli government were charged with war crimes, um, plausibly. And so what we had then was that the talks went on, and this is significant because the talks went on without the US, and nobody was sort of cowering in a corner and saying, gosh, isn't it sad that the US isn't here. They all went on, and China took the lead, especially, and they were discussing the new global governance initiative. So again, we're getting these themes that are very close to that Saturn-Neptune theme at zero Aries, which is about this turning point in where control lies, where power lies in the global system and the systems themselves, what is functioning and what's not functioning. And I would say that also around that time and since then, and this is I think what we'll see really strongly here this week, we already saw it last week, is that the BRICS order is also collapsing. Again, when we're looking at this notion of the alliances that we have with Venus and Saturn today on the 8th of March, as I'm doing this, these are going to be hastily repasted together alliances, and also it will show where current alliances are really feeling the pressure. And again, I'll show that in separate videos with the different charts. And I think what I'll do is do a series of shorter videos about themes like BRICS and themes like Ukraine and so on, because it's too much for one video. But these are significant things because it's no small deal for Mars to be squaring the nodes. It never is, but especially in these days because of the emphasis of so much major change going on in the world, in the global cycles that we find in the astrology, especially of 2025 and 6, which tapers into 2027, because the major configurations that we get in the middle of 2026 at 4-ish degrees of most times continue into 2027, and they happen again at 6 degrees. So again, if you've bought my annuals, and I'm going to put them at a really reduced rate, just so you can access them, they're still valid for really a long, like almost 10 months of the year to come. All of this has been indicated there, not necessarily geopolitically, but in terms of the impact of different aspects and things like this that you'll be averted to well in advance. So you can buy those in the links below, in the video links below. And the other aspect of this was that as Mars was squaring the nodes, this was also the time that the US and China, the two leaders of the US and China, had a phone call on the 24th of November, specifically about Taiwan. So what this suggests is that when Mars gets to the point of the North Node this week, we're going to see a lot of news around issues of these issues that are coming to a head. And Taiwan is, it's an issue that is incredibly difficult to parse out because for decades now, for over almost 6 decades, the US under Nixon started a one China policy, and that was one of the ways that the US was able to get closer to China and open up trade with China, which became very necessary. The US needed China at that time. And And so the part of the deal was that they would acknowledge that Taiwan was a part of China, a province of China, and that one China policy has never actually been officially uh, abandoned by the US. And even, I'm not sure if it's still the case under the current Trump administration, but under just even the Biden administration, you could still see on the State Department website that the US recognized that Taiwan was a part of China. Yet the propaganda and the news would have you believe that Taiwan is some sort of hapless separate country under the shadow of China, when in fact that lingers from Revolutionary Wars and the Cold War era, where the US was instigating separatist movements in Taiwan. Not to say that some people don't want separation from China, it's to say that it's not what it appears. And it's not like China is out of the blue trying to overtake this part of again, another sovereign state. It's not what it appears. Again, nothing is what it appears in geopolitics. So we just have to always keep in mind there's another 10 factors behind every news story. So just keep that open mind. So I suspect that that Taiwan issue is going to again rear its head in this week, if not at least this month, as Mars is coming back now to the North Node, because that was significant around the time of the square on the 24th of November. So that means Ukraine, the geopolitical order, and Taiwan are three things to really look out for. And they're not the only things. You might have other things in mind. You can put that in the comments for us to have a look at, because it's impossible to keep track of all different things. Yeah, so the BRICS last week before, let me put this on now. Before the square, I'm going to come back a week, because believe it or not, all this is happening over just a few days. Like, it's ridiculous how much has changed in a few days. So here, the square between Mars and Uranus was on the 27th of February. On that Friday was when Israel and then quickly the US bombed Iran and started this particular conflagration. And here we have the moon on Jupiter, which is, again, remember, a timing technique. Notice that we're going to have the moon opposite Jupiter, and I'll show you that in a moment when Jupiter stations. And again, that's a timing mechanism. We're going to get some ideas and information coming from this, which are part of what happened there on the 27th of February. And also notice that the sun at this point was on the North Node. So when planets transit the nodes, things happen. It's things that are significant happen. And because Jupiter was retrograde at this time, we're looking at a sun, all of these planets are under the lens of the retrograde cycle of Jupiter because they're ruled by Jupiter. And we had the Venus conjunction with a retrograde Mercury, so they were coming together at that point. But again, it's a debilitated and a Mercury in debilitation and fall in Pisces. So we're not getting clear pictures. We're not getting a clear vision of the plan. And this is quite a legitimate thing in terms of the leadership and the direction of something. We look to the sun. Totally unclear when it hits the nodes. Remember that the nodes have power over the luminaries because it's the nodes that cause eclipses. So we had an eclipse 10 days earlier, and then within the 7 days, within the 10 days of the eclipse, we have Mars at the eclipse point in a square to Uranus, and that eclipse was already in a square to Uranus, and that was part of the disruptive quality of this time. And that's how this war started. And as I said in my previous video, when there's a square in the beginning of something, when there's a challenge that is, in this case, incredibly powerful because it's a partile square, and Uranus is direct now, there's a really powerful energy behind all of this. The sun on the North Node, we're seeing a blanking of leadership. The rulers, the leaders. It's the notion of this decapitation of the Iranian government, for example, the sun, the luminary meeting the North Node. But wait for it, because it won't be the only one. This will play out. This decapitation of rulers is not finished. This is not the only ruler in question. And so, especially because all three of the main players are born on eclipses, and so that always resonates in the charts. We had Khamenei, and now both Netanyahu and Trump are born on eclipses. It's almost like uncanny how this is playing out like a Greek tragedy, at least for the rest of us. And so what we're looking at here is a square that begins this event, and it's not just any square, it's a Mars ruling Neptune and Saturn, which only conjoined a week before at 0 degrees, the global, the Aries point, the world point, the starting of the zodiac. And Mars is in a very strong square to the planet of disruption and revolution and chaos, and major upheaval. So Mars in Aquarius is quite idealistic. It's dogmatic. It's a fixed sign. We already have Pluto there, and that's part of our times. Um, this is going to be an ugly and long-lasting war, because that square needs to be resolved. And Mars and Uranus are going to meet up together in July, and that'll be around 3-4 degrees of Gemini. So again, this is going to play into another cycle that is part of the completing cycle. It's a big story. It's just, we're in a really long ongoing drama. I don't think diplomatically anything will settle until Venus leaves Aries, which is going to be the end of March. So from the 30th of March, Venus will move into her sign and gain some dignity, and things might come to a place where gradually things can stabilize. But I think through March, it's just not going to happen. So here we have Mars on the North Node on the 13th. It extends to the 14th. And at the same time that that's happening, by the time we get to the Ides of March, beware the Ides of March, we have Mars and Mercury conjoining. And that's still on the North Node. So the middle of March is going to be, again, really volatile, really intense. And this is globally. This is not necessarily going to be your situation personally. I'm going to pull up the chart for Mars conjoining Rahu. That's exact on the 13th universal time, so it's at almost 10 p.m., so 21:56. That corresponds to London time. And here we have the completion of that particular journey, or at least the partial completion of the journey of Mars reaching the South Node, which was like the full moon point. And Mars is now starting the new cycle on the North Node, and will continue until it starts to square the nodes again, and that square from the nodes will be when Mars is moving through. How's that going to work? No, Mars will be moving through Taurus. It's not going to, Mars will not be squaring the nodes until well into the summer. Let me just go forward in time and see what comes up. Let me just take this away here so I can see better. Let's get Mars out of here, and we're going to go month by month to go faster. Oopsie. So the nodes are going to be squared when Mars hits Uranus. That's what it is. Yes, that's going to be, the nodes are being squared by Mars just before Mars conjoins Uranus, and that's, yes, that's the 4th of July. People, we can't really get more literal than this, and that's part of this greater configuration. Now, again, I've said this many, many times, especially since Pluto entered into Aquarius. I'm the party pooper that keeps saying that this whole era of change is not the picnic that a lot of people are ascribing to Pluto going into Aquarius. And so we do have some rough patches that we're going to have to get through. And that will be intensified in the summer. So even though, again, there's this flowing energy, and even if we look at today, we have this grand water trine. Remember, when Mars was squaring the nodes, we had all these grand water trines, both direct and retrograde. So a water trine, or any trine, means that events are flowing. So the question is, what is flowing? Trines allow things to continue, that allows a momentum to be gained, but it's not necessarily constructive momentum. So what we need actually are these squares where we have resistance. Something has to break. And we saw, for example, when the US and Israel went to war against Iran on the 27th, that broke a pattern. That's what a square does. A square challenges us to change the pattern. A square is of the nature of Mars. An opposition is of the nature of Saturn. There's an obstacle. There's something that we need to overcome, or to find a way to navigate. And a square is of the nature of Mars. There's going to be a clash. If you think of yourself moving along a sidewalk, for example, and then there's a perpendicular sidewalk or a car coming up on a road that's perpendicular, if you just keep going, you're going to crash. And that means that there has to be an adjustment when a Mars square, or any square, which is of the nature of Mars, comes along. Somebody has to yield. And this is where what the expectation was, is that Iran would crumble, people would be thrilled and delighted that everything was being blown up in their country, and just like all the other attempts to overthrow governments, everything went pear-shaped, because again, we're dealing with elements that are connecting to unpredictable things. The North Node is unpredictable. Now, as we come forward, finally get to today's video topic. As we go forward, we're looking at Jupiter directly stationing in Cancer, where it's considered to be exalted. And again, in a personal chart, that can be very helpful. Exaltation allows the planet to feel extremely powerful, brings out the best qualities of the planet. But again, it can be in extreme, things can be taken to extremes. Now, again, what is behind the use of the planet, I think, is, what's the planet being used for, or what's the metaphor that we're looking at here. So here on the 11th of March, which is overnight Wednesday, 3:29:52 Universal Time in the morning, overnight. So for North and South America, that's the 10th of March. For the rest of the world, it's the 11th. Here we have, again, we're still maintaining this trine, and Mercury, of course, is still retrograde, but now Jupiter is stationing direct. And what we're finding here is that the moon is in conjunct. So Jupiter, of course, is the ruler of the moon, and the moon is the ruler of Jupiter, but they don't see each other here. So as much as it's much more preferable to have Jupiter moving direct, because otherwise things feel like they're really stuck, it's difficult in terms of the direct station chart to find things that will be easy. And things will not be easy and flowing, because we have so many things that are challenging at this time. We have a retrograde Mercury, Mars on the North Node, Mercury backing up to the North Node. And so there are challenges. The moon itself is in a third quarter square with the sun, approaching the new moon that's coming on the 19th of March for the Pisces new moon. So where it's just allow more time, and especially don't expect that things are going to suddenly resolve. It's in the nature of the planet to go retrograde and direct. It's an optical illusion. When a planet is retrograde, it's actually really, really strong, because it's close to the Earth. We can see the outer planets are closer to the Earth and very, very bright in the sky when they're retrograding. It's Venus and Mercury that we don't see as easily, and then to a lesser degree Mars when they're retrograde. So it's mitigated. It's mitigated, and I wish I could say something more positive, but this is what it is. So Jupiter is now ruling Mars, the North Node, Mercury, and the Sun, and of course Mercury is retrograde all the way through till the middle of April. Mercury is in Pisces all the way through the middle of April. And it will only reach the shadow point where it finally stationed retrograde at 22 Pisces on the 5th of April. So we still have a journey, here of a few weeks before things start to feel like there is a form and a shape to things. So hold your horses. And of course, as everything is leaving Pisces, and I'll keep coming back to this, they're moving into Aries. And that the warlike martial energy of Aries, the impulse, and the desire for change and the desire for newness is going to continue. When we do have Mars on the North Node, notice that the moon is has moved into, hang on, where's Mars? When that's on the North Node, notice that the moon is in detriment, and again in opposition to Jupiter. Remember that it was with Jupiter as Mars was on the South Node. So we're getting a kind of a parallel story here. The moon represents not only the timekeeping and the triggers of things, but it represents issues around the public, the people. And we can say when the moon is in Capricorn, in terms of the public, it's a huge degree of dissatisfaction. So that's, of course, not surprising to anyone. But to join the party, and this is again going to be a separate video, we also have Chiron and Aries that are getting closer and closer and closer by degree, and then finally exactly on the 19th of March, they will come back together for the last time in Aries. This will be the finishing touch of that particular cycle, which also is a repeat of 71-72, 1971-72. And I thought it was really interesting to look at the Shah of Iran, who was put in position of power by the U.S. by their coup by the U.S. and UK overthrowing Mossadegh in 1953, which was again the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of that period of time. I thought I'd just have a look. Have I got it here yet? So there was a big party that was a huge blunder in terms of the people's assessment of the Shah, because it was so obnoxious at a time when the people were really suffering because the US had imposed sanctions on Iran all these years. Or rather, they not sanctioned them. That was after the 79 revolution, but rather the US and the UK, and then to a certain degree France, were taking oil from Iran, and that created a huge economic downturn, or just a lot of lack, let's say, in the economy, not to mention status, because the Shah was basically the puppet of the West. Which many Iranians resented anyway. But then he threw this lavish party, which cost millions. There's a bunch of different numbers, some of which are outrageously extravagant. But in today's dollar value, really just a huge sum of money, perhaps 100 million US dollars. That was a party to celebrate the 25th century, 2,500 years of the Persian Empire. Note that, because this is a long-standing empire that is not easy to destabilize, right? So it's not as easy as taking away a leader. Iran has seen so many invasions and so many wars. But what's interesting is that Mars was on the North Node at that time as well. So it had just passed on. This party took a year to plan. It was a crazy party. They had something like 3,000 birds brought in from Spain, and all the birds died because of the desert conditions. It was October, hot and dry, and all these birds died within 3 days of coming from Spain. They brought in trees, they made tents in the desert. It was outside of Shiraz, just outside of the town of Shiraz, where they had created a whole city for dignitaries to come. It was just outrageous. And this was like the beginning of the end. And here we have a Mars on the North Node in a trine to the Sun, where the Sun is with Uranus at this time. The Sun is with Mercury as well. It's a bad look. We have Neptune conjoining Jupiter. It's extravagant. It's Jupiter in Sagittarius, which is its home, but it can be very arrogant and extravagant. And that is in a trine to the moon as well. This is all about appearances. It's all about establishing appearances. And once again, the moon is going to come into this conjunction with the South Node, and eventually then square Uranus, square the Sun, which is a trigger, remember, a trigger. And this party really started to get the grumblings going. So it wasn't out of the blue that people overthrew the Shah. It was a long simmering issue. And I'm just pointing to that because we have symptoms of these long simmering issues. We've got this Pluto, of course, still in the sextile to Neptune, and then Neptune and especially Jupiter in opposition to a retrograde Saturn. So again, not a good look, and just keep these things in mind. This was at the same area or the era of the conjunction of Chiron and Aries, which points to hypocrisy, it points to dissatisfaction, it points to a recognition of things being dysfunctional in terms of the individual rights and privileges, in terms of status, because again, this was all about status. Dignitaries and world leaders came from all over to join this party. It's an actual study in history in the leadership. It's a very interesting thing to observe. Be careful what you watch because there's a lot of AI videos about that. But if you go to videos that have been online for years already, you'll see videos that are like 15 years old, 13 years old. Go to the older videos to see the actual story of it because you have a lot of people profiting from this conflict to throw up videos that are about these triggers to today's events. So coming back now, coming back to Jupiter, back to Jupiter. Again, we're looking at a situation where there are a number of things that are uncomfortable, that are frustrating, that people are getting really teed off about. And then as Jupiter moves into into the station and moves forward, the moon is starting to oppose it as Mars moves on. So yeah, Mars moves on to the north node as Mercury gets closer to the north node, Rahu. And here what we're seeing is the same kind of story, building up of massive frustration, massive exasperation that will bring us to the point in, what did I say, the 4th of July, when Uranus is going to square the nodes, but Uranus will be with Mars. So mark these dates, mark these periods in time for yourself in your personal life to know what's going on here and now in your life, how you're grappling with these things, and notice that there's going to be some feedback that's coming forward, and you can also look backwards in time and see some feedback coming back from last November and last July, inter alia. So let me just double check that I have said everything I wanted to. Oh, one of the things about the Mars on the North Node, and I'll just pull up that chart while I'm talking about it. Mars on the North Node in Vedic astrology is known as Angarika Yoga. Yoga just means things joining together, coming together. And Angarika is the one of the names of Mars, and that means the thing that's burning hot. It's burning red. Like if you look at Mars in the sky, it's the red planet, and it also is in that metaphorical sense of burning hot or burning red, like embers, in terms of the anger and heat of war, the violence and the eruption, and that's important to keep in mind. We in English we derive the word anger from Angarika. And so it's really hard to not see this, especially when we're looking at a global situation. In an individual sense, it's easier to manage consciously if we are conscious about it, meaning that we have the capacity to channel the energy of Mars. And in that element, in that way of looking at Mars, then Mars is called Mangala. And the Mangal, it's auspicious. It means auspicious. Like you would say Sarve Mangalam when there's something that you're celebrating, including, for example, India's National Day. Say Sarve Mangalam, and it's even a song. It's the national anthem. And so it's about being auspicious, and it's about channeling the energy of Mars in a useful, constructive way. And to do so, it requires conscious awareness. Now, here's where things get very helpful, because we also have Jupiter. I didn't put it up here, but Jupiter is on Sirius. And Sirius, I've done other videos on Sirius as the star of a wisdom and enlightenment. It can come through difficulty. So often we're wise because of the shit that we had to go through. We're not just randomly wise. Some people are born just kind of randomly wise, and they're sort of fundamentally wise beings. But for the rest of us, we have to go through all kinds of stupid things to get us to that place of wisdom. And this would be one of the symbols of Sirius, is to understand the wisdom of the moment. And Sirius is known as the dog star, which gives us the dog days of summer. It's at this point where we find the U.S. sun. So the United States has its sun at about 13 degrees of Cancer, or Jupiter is backing into the US sun, which is conjoining Sirius. And of course, that's where the sun is on the 4th of July. And this is where we find Jupiter lingering from February through March, basically. And so it's been very, very close within the 2 degrees required of a conjunction of Sirius all this time, of this very slow, lingering wait, let's say, while it appears to station direct in the sign. Again, it's only an illusion, it's not really happening. It's just that the way that the planets orbit the sun makes it look from the Earth's perspective like it's stopped in space. The fixed star, of course, never moves, or it moves so slowly that it's usually one lifetime before it does a degree of change in the zodiac. So it's there. And that's where Jupiter is. And this is also the exaltation degree. 15 degrees of Cancer is the exaltation degree of the exaltation sign of Jupiter. So one saving grace is that we can find wisdom in this and channel that Mars on the North Node and have this sense of, I know which action to take. Now we have a wise and forward moving, forward thinking, forward motion Jupiter, which is guiding that Mars and guiding, of course, the Sun and the retrograde Mercury as well. I would suspect that it would, again, still be wise to give yourself a birth of time, a wide moment of time, a couple of weeks even. Get Mars well away from that North Node so you really make sense of what that new destination is, that new meaning is for you, because Mars will be meeting up with Mercury. It will be when Mercury's on the North Node that it stations itself direct on the 20th. And then we have the spring equinox when the Sun moves into Aries on the 20th of March, and that's going to be when the Sun becomes exalted in Aries. But again, conjoining Neptune, etc., etc. So more of that to come. But as long as the Moon is, here in its detriment, I think it would be a good idea to certainly don't initiate anything at this particular time unless you really know where you need to go with things. But give it a space of time. And after the middle of March, after the month of March, I would even suggest that things will start to get better. Certainly around the time of the equinox, from that point on, initiating energy is much better. The Sun is important when we're starting something. The dignity of the Sun is significant in terms of, all kinds of projects, and it also references our sense of purpose. And so after the 20th, 21st of March, this is a good time to start to really rev up the engines. And again, if things have to happen or you're underway with something, then just carry on and just use your best guidance. Keeping in mind the 19th of March is going to be the final time that Chiron and Aries conjoin. That whole event between the new moon in Pisces, which is the 19th, with Aries and Chiron together, and then the 20th being both the ingress of the Sun into Aries and therefore the equinox, and the day that Mercury stations direct on the North Node. Lord knows what's going to happen that day, but it's going to be a day. So here we are. So keep your cool. If you feel all het up, then don't drink too much coffee. Don't drink alcohol. Beware of alcohol. This is not a good time to drink. It'd be a great time to quit and to use that energy of drive and conviction. The Mars in Pisces has that spiritual warrior energy, which is very, very strong now with so many things here in Aries as well. These are new days. These are new moments in history that we're living through. Really, really difficult to see the end of the story. So we're here in the middle of the story. We're in like chapter 4, paragraph 2. So carry on. We're still in only book 1 early on in the story. I'm going to come back now to Jupiter, and I'm going to focus on Jupiter in terms of the direct station for this all signs, because it's just important. It's really not easy to do all of these different things for each individual, but we'll keep coming back to them. So don't worry, you're going to be well informed by the end of these few weeks. So I'm just going to back it up here a couple of hours, and that means that we're going to miss the retrograde for Aries rising and a couple of others, simply because I want to have Aries on the ascendant. Hang on here. Oh, right, we're going forward, so it's fine. Never mind, we're fine. We've got the direct station even for Aries rising. My brain is not computing this. Okay, so you can skip the timing around this. It's definitely the 11th of March, however. And as of this point, from an Aries sun, moon, or ascendant point of view, Jupiter is now direct in your fourth house. It's the ruler of your ninth house of your purpose, and it's also the ruler of your 12th house of your spirit, or what you have faith in, or even long distance or foreign issues, because both the ninth and the 12th carry that symbolism, which is very strongly affiliated with Jupiter. So even if we look at that from the natural chart, Pisces, which you have, Pisces ruling the 12th, ruled by Jupiter, and the Pisces and Sagittarius, sorry, Jupiter ruling the 12th, which is in the sign of Pisces. Signs don't rule anything. Sagittarius in the ninth, ruled by Jupiter, both have the quality of something that is bigger than us. It's something that is spiritual, something that is an ideal, something that is an ideology, potentially. So this is really huge for you, because the Jupiter in the fourth resonates with how you feel safe and secure, where you find your comfort zone. And you might find that between now, the 11th of March, and the 30th of June, I forgot to mention that, which is when Jupiter leaves Cancer, that you have quite a sense of where you want to go, how you want to put yourself, your physical self, in terms of where you live, or how you live, with whom you live, or how you deal with your family, but also in terms of your internal experience of life. And how do you feel about life? Are you feeling solid? Are you feeling stable? And I think this can be something that gives you a great support, at the same time as you're getting quite a lot of energy thrown at you with all these planets coming into your sign. And soon you're going to have 7 planets, if not more, when the moon keeps adding to the equation as we go through March and into April. So your birthday season is going to be pretty full on Aries, for those of you with the sun in Aries. And even if you have moon or ascendant in Aries, it's going to be really full on. Your life is going to be busy, and you're going to have a really strong sense of needing to act in a way, taking action in your life in novel ways, in ways that are self-affirming, ideally. You had the Venus and Saturn conjunction on the 8th of March in your sign, and so it might be that you're finding yourself in a new dimension with reference to relationships, because Venus rules your 7th house of relationships. And this could be something where you're deciding for yourself, am I in the right relationship? Am I working in the right way with this individual? And Saturn itself rules your 10th house, as well as the 11th house of your future, 10th house of your social status and your ambitions, but also your career ambitions, or the way that you show up out in the world and for the world. And there might be something here that you're learning, you want to establish, and that can be really favorable if you are with the right people, or you're at least connecting to who you need and who is the right kind of person. And this can be as much of a time marker in terms of establishing something that is significant for you, both in the relational dynamic, but also in the career or social dynamic, that you can work towards, and especially now that Jupiter is direct. Mars, your ruler, is with the North Node, and it's in a house that can be quite unconscious. So you want to really sit with yourself, take time, build up a lot of awareness around how you're doing, how you're feeling. Jupiter in the 4th house can bring a lot of emotion. It can bring a lot of like an expanded sense, perhaps, of vulnerability or sensitivity, as it is in Cancer. And so you do want to be, aware, self-aware as much as possible. You're asked to be more self-aware with Saturn in your sign. As long as Saturn is in Aries, which it is until April 12th of 2028, that's what your task is. Saturn is asking you to bring more awareness to yourself, more responsibility to how you show up, more responsibility for you, towards yourself. And all of these things are going to be sort of behind the scenes cultivated at this time. So I think this can be a time that can be, for some of you, actually, paradoxically, a time to sort of pull back a little bit and reflect, and then move forward. You know, there's an expression in French which is reculer pour mieux sauter, which means you have to take a step back so you can jump forward even better. And there might be an equivalent in English, but I don't know. I can't remember it. So put that in the comments if you can think of that. But just have a sense that this is a good time to take stock. It's not necessarily a time to jump in. And anyway, with Saturn in your sign, you might find yourself in many ways sort of prevented from jumping in. And we're going to come back to you again and again because you're the topic of the months of March and April. There's a lot going on. And then, of course, with Neptune, Saturn in your sign and lingering Aries and Chiron right through June for Chiron and Aries for another few years, it's going to be a big topic to examine yourself and how you operate. With Pluto in your 11th, ruled by this Saturn, now in your first house, this is a great opportunity for you to think of how I can show up for my future, how I can, find your goals. You need goals to keep yourself in check. That's especially true with Mars on the North Node. Make sense of your goals. Make your goals relate to what you feel is important, what you have faith in, what you know is going to bring you stability and a sense of security, as Jupiter's in your fourth, ruling that Mars and North Node right now. The Mercury retrograde cycle will help you with this because that's going to be an opportunity to revise, maybe even through meditation or dreams or ways of having conversations a little bit under the radar, conversing with people, with friends, with lovers about future plans. And all the more so because your exaltation ruler, the sun, is there. And Mars itself not only rules you, but it rules your eighth house of intimacy and shared values and shared resources. So the 12th house is the house of loss as well as, other things. And so you also want to think carefully about investments. The sun rules your fifth house of investments. Risk taking, that's Mars on the North Node, and that's kind of your vibe anyway. So think carefully. Think of the consequences of taking risks based on the things that you exchange with others, how you are impacting others, especially with Venus in your first, ruling the seventh. So rules your money house as well. Venus rules the second house where you still have Uranus. So slow your roll, think deeply before taking action. And just know that you are always going to benefit from a slow and deliberate process in these days, especially with Saturn and Neptune in your first house. You're not always going to be seeing yourself clearly or your motives clearly at this time. And so you can just kind of sense your way forward and have a sense that this is actually a good time to reflect. South Node is also in your sixth house, ruled by that retrograde Mercury in your 12th. And that can also be maybe, again, a realization or a decision or a need now to take action based on your health. It can be mental or physical health, and also especially based on work and a job that you might have or obligations that you might have towards others, especially because Mars rules your eighth. That can be financial obligations or just material obligations. How do I need to show up for somebody who might not be doing well, for example? And is that done now? Or am I done with that now? Right, I'd need to see your chart to know more about that. But it's hard to overstate how important these days are for you, Aries, and not just the days, but the years. So think of it as a major opportunity for self-growth, for self-awareness, and for putting yourself out into the world in a way that feels more masterful, that you're using yourself for the greater good, especially with Saturn ruling your 10th and the 11th. You're contributing something through you. So let's put the best out there in the world. All right, Aries, I'll see you in the next video. Taurus, your ruler, Venus, has been with Saturn, and particularly exactly on the 8th of March. They come together in a new cycle, a new synodic cycle with Venus on Saturn that will repeat itself in the Taurus season, when Venus and Saturn will be on the 21st degree of Aries on the 7th of May in 2027. So look for this cycle because it's important. It's your ruler. And this is another way of looking at yourself through the inner lens and really observing how you connect with other people. You've got Jupiter in the third now direct, and Jupiter is ruling your 11th house. So the third house is communication and local space and siblings and cousins and extended family, and also your neighbors and your neighborhood and your everyday experience of life. And that's ruling the 11th house as well as the 8th house of shared resources and money, what you receive through relationship, what you receive through others, and what you understand psychologically, and where your ruler is in the 12th resonates a lot with that 8th house, where we find the moon, which is your exaltation ruler and also ruled by this Jupiter. So prophetic dreams, having understandings of things through insights or through intimate relationships, relationships that are not necessarily revealed, or the way that you relate to other people, which is not necessarily revealed to others. And this can bring you some new insights around the way that you are interacting with people, the way you communicate, which is huge. Perhaps now you're going to find more clarity, more sense of purpose with that. Mars is not so easy in the 11th house. It can be either an opportunity for great rulership, and again, this will depend on your natal chart. It can be an opportunity to take responsibility for, at the very least, your own future, but a project or a social group or your image out in the public. That's your fan base, the 11th house. It's your people that look at you, follow you on social media, for example, or if you're literally on stage, that's people in the audience. And the 11th house is your casual friends and acquaintances. Mars rules your 7th, which is the more important relationships. So there's something that can come through a very special person that you bring into the 11th house, or you're meeting somebody significant through a friend, for example, or through an organization, and that will set off something very new for you, very dynamic for you. But the Mars North Node can also trigger potential arguments or difficulties, especially because Mercury is retrograde around that time, and it's backing up into Mars and into the North Node. So just beware of clashes if this is about a political or ideological or religious belief, some spiritual belief. You've got not only the Mars North Node and Mercury there in your 11th, but you've also got Saturn, which rules your 9th house with your ruler. So there's something that feels restrictive or challenging that you might sort of resist, and be careful of that, simply because you want to be clear who you're connecting with. There can be super positive connections with Jupiter in the third, super positive motivation as well. The third is your willpower and how you do what you do. But it can also trip you up in ways that you get caught up in an ideological belief or a struggle around what's right and what's wrong. And as I said in the introduction, these are times where we're not really clear what the heck's going on. And just know that it's always better to come closer to your people and to your sense of self and to your feeling of, where am I now? Who am I now, etc., so that you are working from that place, that you're grounded in who you are, as opposed to like jumping into the conversation pit around, who's right, who's wrong. It's a challenging energy simply because, we've got this is the third quarter square, the moon squaring the sun, which both impact Jupiter. The moon is ruling that, and Jupiter is ruling the sun and the moon. And that sun square the moon, which is your exaltation ruler, is in a place where there can be tension and conflicts, especially because the moon is in the house of things that are that can come through unconscious or psychological trauma or issues or worries and fears. 8th house is often associated with fear, and that's all the more so because your ninth house ruler, Saturn, is in the 12th. Venus, your ruler, is in the 12th. So there's also the Neptune in the 12th, can have you imagining things, being afraid of things that are not necessarily guaranteed to happen or not necessarily what is true. in the moment. You still have Uranus to contend with in your first house, and that will have been a huge part of February for you as Mars was squaring that. So you will have been personally really struggling with instability already in February. Um, and know that that is also something that you can use, again, consciously using that Mars on the North Node to change the direction of your future or to have a vision for the future that you really want to see, or the relationships that you really want to see, or the income that you really want to see, because Mercury is also there, second house ruler. So many things that can come through that. And the love relationship you want to see, Mercury rules your fifth house, where that's changing too with the South Node there. So channel that into courage. You know, Mars on the North Node, again, if it's channeled through wisdom, can be very courageous, taking new steps, as opposed to just explosive anger that's not used with clarity. So make the most of this, Taurus, and I will see you in the next video. And Gemini, your ruler is retrograde at this time, and Jupiter has only just stationed direct now around the 11th of March. You will find your ruler stationing direct around the 20th of March, which is just after the eclipse in on the 20th also, and just after the new moon in Pisces at the end of Pisces. So lots of change for you, lots of shape-shifting, because you've also got Mars on the North Node. Mars will meet up with your ruler on, so Mars on the North Node on the 13th, Mars meets up with your ruler on the 15th, and then your ruler stations on the 20th. So there's a lot of change in the air for you, Gemini. And that's only the that's only the path towards having Uranus move into your house of self as of the 26th of April. So prepare yourself with this sense of, where do I want to put my attention? Where do I want to put my energy? The 10th house is your ambitions, your sense of like your personal drive and ambition. Where do I want to go with these things? Who do I want to do that with? You've got Jupiter in your house of values and money now moving forward. So if you felt that things were a bit stuck around that kind of thing, it can be that now that unleashes a sense of conviction around your self-worth or the value of things, the value of your work, how you glean any income or value from the things that you do. And that includes your marriage or your important relationships, including like business partners, because Jupiter rules your seventh. And currently, at the time that it's stationing, the moon is there, and they're in an unusual sort of mutual generosity here with each other in the other's sign. The moon is squaring the sun that's in your 10th at this time, and that can create some kind of attention. So both attention and a tension around these topics of partnership. That includes like marital type partnership and so on. So if there's a new direction that needs to unfold, give it some time. Don't certainly while your ruler is retrograde, don't jump to conclusions, and work through things that have come up already through past issues. So if there's been a confusion or something that you need to take action on, use this time, and especially between now and the 20th of March. But I would just keep it going as long as possible, because your ruler Mercury is not out of the shadow zone until the 5th of April. And that will only be from the 5th of April that things start to take on a fresh energy, meaning that you're not then continuing to go over things that have already been occurring since the beginning of February. I think it was the 6th of February when Mercury first met the North Node, which is where it stations retrograde, direct even. Sorry, I'm a bit tired. Um, yeah, so big times for you. Lots of change on the horizon. You have Venus and Saturn on the 8th of March, which is when I'm doing this video. Venus and Saturn are creating a new cycle in your 11th house of the future. So this can also represent new alliances and friends, new groups of people, new acquaintances, new memberships or new clubs, or a new vision for your future. The 11th house is also a money house. And so there may be some sense of needing to get serious around the money that you might earn from the thing that you do, or the money that comes to you through other people. It may not be really happening simply because of all of the confusion or the lack of clarity that Neptune is continuing to throw on Saturn, and then Venus. Venus and Saturn are meeting at 2 degrees of Aries, and Neptune is 1 degree of Aries. So this is still very confused times, as you might have heard from the introduction. And so if this is about negotiating perhaps money that you earn, or how you deal with clients, for example, or how you deal with a spouse, and how you navigate shared income, because Saturn also rules your eighth house of marriage, intimacy, shared resources, I would tread carefully there. Don't for sure don't loan money to people at this time. If you can as well, don't borrow money at this time. I think it's not going to be easy for you um, if you do so. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. I'd need to see your natal chart to see more about that. But we will come back and talk more and more and more about all these aspects that are throwing themselves at us all the way through March and into April. All right, see you in the next video. Cancer, Jupiter is in your sign for Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. It's in your first house of self, and the way that you navigate through life, the way people see you, and how you reach out into the world. And so you might find yourself after a period of stagnation or feeling of being held back in some way or frustrated in some way, you might find yourself moving forward in a way that feels much more productive, or perhaps even confident. There's a bit of a caveat here because of all of the potential hurdles that are there in the ninth house. But as all of this is trinal to Cancer, all of the water signs are having an easier time of this particular episode, partly because Jupiter is so protective and so helpful, and when it's trinal, it's even more so because trines are of the nature of Jupiter and they're adding to that quality of support. But also, if you're into something that's dodgy or not helpful, that will keep you going down that road. So if you're doing something foolish like a multi-level marketing scheme, aka pyramid scheme or something like that, know that you might be digging yourself deeper into a hole, and that would not be a good direction to take. So be clear about certain directions that you're taking. Use that Mars on the North Node on the 13th to really be clear about where you're navigating yourself. You do have Mercury in a trine to Jupiter. That's helpful in terms of getting inspiration and new ideas, but it's also retrograde still. Mercury is still retrograde, and it's both in detriment and in fall in Pisces. And it's going to be stationing on the North Node just after meeting up with Mars. So there's going to be a lot of energy around your vision for yourself. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Maybe even confusion around that, and a kind of a need to reconfigure that. Go back to July last year, July 2025, when Mars was on the South Node on the 21st of July, 2025. And there may have been something that you realized at that point that you're able to make an adjustment for in terms of where you're actually going towards, as opposed to what you need to leave behind. Your ruler, the moon, is in your sixth house of work and also health. And it's not seeing you. It's in conjunct. It's in a quincunx from the sixth house back to the first. However, it is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is ruled by the moon. So they're kind of helping each other out. But it does require a little bit of caution or delicate handling in terms of how your health is going, what you agree to, how you move forward to find this future, because there can be some, the moon in the sixth house can show up as fluctuating health issues or dynamics around health that are not necessarily stable. It will be, it's not going to be true of everyone, but there can be issues that are resolving in terms of health concerns. But it can also be with Jupiter in the first, and the moon in the sixth, that there is something that you're doing yourself that needs to stop so that your health improves. So it's not necessarily something happening to you, but it's things that you're doing, self-indulgence or choices that are happening there in ways that are not supporting your health. And that would be a good thing to pay attention to, because here we have the moon in a square to the sun, which Jupiter is also ruling. Jupiter rules your ninth house and your sixth house. And so there is a tension here. The tension between the square of the moon and the sun is showing you something about the direction that you want to take or your vision for yourself. And that will include not only just the health issue, but or potential for health. It's not guaranteed, it's just a potential, but also how you navigate your everyday life. If you're working and you're working with staff or you have coworkers, that's also the sixth house. And also the sixth house represents obstacles and things that you need to do, things that like the everyday stuff that you need to get going on. And Jupiter going forward will help you with that. But just to say that there can be some things that you need to manage better for yourself. That can be your schedule, it can be your health, it can be your daily habits. How you're operating around showing up for colleagues or showing up for your staff, or how they show up with you. And this is quite determinant because you also, aside from all of this impact of the ninth house, which has been so strong for you for a very, very long time, because Saturn and Neptune were up there, and then the North Node moved in there on the 11th of January 2025. So it's still been a very huge focus of attention for you, your future, your what am I here for, your sense of your faith, what do I have faith in? This might be a week, or even we could call it a month, where your faith is tested. And now you're starting to pluck up the courage, especially after Mars is on the North Node, plucking up the courage that you may have felt kind of dried up, or that you didn't really feel so strongly was there. That can work in your advantage. And again, using that Mars, feeling the aim and the purpose of why you're here really, really clearly. Beware of getting into, explosive dynamics around your ideology or your sense of what you believe in, your faith. Avoid religious arguments, avoid political arguments, avoid arguing with idiots, basically. Um, leave it at that. Just don't get involved. Not to say everybody that you're arguing with is an idiot. It might be you. So there we are. All of us, because I'm Cancer Moon and Ascendant. So it's a good time to settle in and keep your counsel, unless you're literally counseling some individual. That's a different thing, because that's part of what you're taking action on. But just that you give yourself some time to digest what's actually going on before you assert where you need to move forward. So many things are changing for you. And then, of course, the really major impetus here is also the fact that Saturn and Venus just conjoined also with Neptune in your 10th house. And that's a new cycle of relationship or public relations, or relationship in terms of a marital type dynamic or a personal relationship type dynamic, how the public relates to you, or your sense of your reputation or otherwise. That's a whole new cycle that's beginning, and that started on the 8th of March, which is when I'm doing this, not filming, because nobody does that anymore. There's a lot more to be said about your 10th house that we'll keep coming back to, because it's the theme. So your way of showing up in the world, how you reach out into the world, how you reach into your parental responsibilities or your responsibilities towards your parents, as well as your career ambitions and how that might impact you and the people who are working with you, or who are your higher ups, your authority figures. That can also be part of that dynamic of change. All of this is the theme for a very long time to come. Saturn will be there till April 12th, 2028, and Neptune will be there until, like, God knows, 2038 or some very, very far away time. But, so this is the topic. So when you work with that Mars and the Mercury retrograde and the North Node in your ninth house, with the Sun, by the way, Sun in the ninth is in its joy. So it's a great time for Cancer. That Pisces season for Cancer is incredibly supportive for a million different reasons. And that Sun is in its joy in the ninth house. So this is a wonderful opportunity to sit down, pen and paper, and consciously work out where you feel your energy is best placed, where you want to see yourself in your life. You can do this visualization of your future self and work through that in your own way, and then start to build up a plan of action. Because when Mars moves into your 10th house, it's going to be all systems go, and you might be finding yourself in the hot seat in terms of the work that you're doing. which will pick up and really accelerate when Mars goes into Aries, which is the beginning of April. I think it's the 6th of April, something like that. Oh my goodness, so many things. Okay, so good luck with all that, Cancer. I will see you in the next video. Leo, of course, the sun is your ruler, still in the eighth house for you. So this is not your favorite season, but still lots of energy for you in the eighth house to mull over and redirect your attention to areas of overcoming fear, how you share resources with people, psychological issues or emotional issues of intimacy, how you connect with people intimately in all different ways, especially as the moon itself is in your fifth house and ruling Jupiter in your 12th house, which is the house of bed pleasures, where Jupiter is also the ruler of the moon and the ruler of your eighth house, where everything else, including your ruler, is found. So there's a lot of connections there around love and children, your impulse for self-expression, or your feeling around, maybe feeling, especially up until this point, since the 11th of November, maybe restricted around that and restricted in how you might express yourself. And now 4 months later, you're getting this opportunity to kind of push yourself out and forward. And Mars on the North Node is something to pay attention to because it might call in some challenges in marriage or in business partnerships or with money that you receive from a marital partner or clients or inheritance, money that you receive from other means. There can be a lot happening around that, things that you need to take action on or things that cause disruption, things that lead you to step away from people or agreements. Venus is with Saturn in your ninth house, and she's the ruler of your house of agreements, the third house of contracts, and it's your willpower as well, and all kinds of exchanges with people. And she's up in the ninth house, which is trinal to you, so that's favorable, but she's not comfortable there, and even less so because she's with Saturn. So there's a restriction around a sense of your purpose or your vision for yourself. That is going to ease off. So it's something that that's happening right now very powerfully, but it's part of the theme of Saturn Neptune for you, which is an extended theme, and I've done other videos about that. So your raison d'être and why am I here? Why am I alive? Why do I get out of bed is a really big focus for you. And you might be finding, especially with Pluto in your seventh, that you're really deciding now, I'm done with this person, I'm done with this marriage, I'm done with this potential family as well. I'm done with this income or the source of income. I'm done with this way of going through life in a way that keeps holding me back or making me feel fearful, or psychological issues that I've inherited through the family. And now I am moving in this different direction. And Jupiter in the 12th can be incredibly supportive in terms of your overall underlying emotional feeling. Mars is the ruler of your fourth house of both family and lineage, but also property and also how you feel about things. It's the house of happiness and what makes you happy and the things that you need to feel secure and so on. And so there can be something that you need from somebody else that you may not be getting or that you may need to fight for. In the eighth house, that's also part of an emotional need as well as potentially a financial need. So the eighth and the second house and eighth house, where the nodes are, which is again a continuing theme for you since the beginning of 2025, those are both, it's the house of sex and money. It's like the house of taboo stuff. It's the house of things that are driven by potentially fear, out of fear of insecurity around finances or trust or love and money. But in a deep, intimate way. And here we have the dynamic of Pisces and Virgo for you, which is about the dynamic of, it can be a victim-martyr dynamic or a savior type dynamic that's at play. And that's ruled now by a much wiser Jupiter in your 12th house, where you might be becoming aware of patterns that are of your undoing. The 12th house is your undoing. What am I doing to myself through my life that is not good for me? And this would be a realization around, yep, it's time to stop. And again, I would have to see your natal chart to see if that's personally applicable, but it can be a theme to pay attention to, that you're becoming aware. You might be becoming aware also of what is known as open enemies, or people who are rather hidden enemies, or people who are pretending to be there for you, but they're really not, or people who are undermining you, but you're not quite sure who. And that again will enlighten you. It'll show you, oh, right, my instincts were right. And really, with all this energy in your 8th house, your 12th house, it's a great time to really trust those instincts. It's super helpful in terms of really understanding your gut and going with it. And again, just with the caveat that at these particular moments right now in this middle of March, there's a lot of instability. So you might be acting on things that are incomplete information, or not entirely true. So just hold your, just let it settle for a little bit until you're really absolutely sure, and strategize. Strategize at this point. Mars, when it crosses the North Node, can get you into trouble if you don't have a clear sense of what's actually going on in your heart and in your, um, in your gut. Trust your gut. Here, what we have is, the moon in your 5th house of your heart, and your self-expression. So notice that there might be something emotionally driven, or a drive for getting out of something, getting out of a relationship, getting out of a contract, getting out of some bind that you don't feel comfortable any longer with. That will become, again, better supported after the 30th of June, when Jupiter moves into your sign. So you're going to have a lot more boost, a lot more support, but use your deep sense of intuition and work towards something that is going to take you to a better place for you. And that might mean sort of clearing the decks in terms of relationships, or at least some of them, or the way that you do relationships. And of course, also you have this Saturn-Neptune and the Saturn-Venus conjunction that was from the 8th, and that's in a trine to you. So there's a lot that is changing that is very favorable to you, but you want to understand why you're doing what you're doing and who's on your team and who's not. All right. I'll leave it there. I need to find out more about your personal chart to know more about that. So do, if you want, book a reading with me. And otherwise, there's also the annual readings, which tell you more about the year ahead. And I'll link those below. Okay, bye, Leo. See you in the next video. And for Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, lots happening in your relationship sector. That can be business partners as well as life partners, or just the quality of relating. So if you're not in a particular relationship, notice where you are relating both to yourself and others. And that's always going to be a mirror of yourself, and more so because your ruler, Mercury, is in the opposite sign from you. It's in your relationship house. And so there can be something that you're becoming aware of during this Mercury retrograde phase. And I've already done a video talking a lot about that Mercury retrograde, and it'll continue to be very topical for the next few weeks, because it's part of the theme of Mercury going back and forth through Pisces, really up until April. You are always in that period of introspection or self-awareness when Mercury retrogrades, so you can use this to your advantage. And notice where you need to take action on things that are not functional for you in the dynamic of relationships, especially because Mars is going to cross that North Node, and then meet your ruler Mercury, and then Mercury itself will station on the North Node. So this is a really big opportunity for you to take control, as it were, not control, but take control of the issues of whatever needs to change in relationships, or however you need to step into a particular relationship or a new dynamic in relationship. You might have stuff coming at you from another person, because Mars is there on the North Node. What is unresolved, or what is perceived as unfair or inadequate or whatever, is going to come back at you. So you'll want to be, rather than being on the back foot and feeling defensive about things, just know that they're going to be people who might be edgy with you as well when that Mars, especially with the North Node, comes through. You haven't had Mars in this part of your chart for 2 years, and 2 years ago you did not have the North Node there. So this is new and different. It's not a quality that you are regularly managing, and especially also with the Mercury retrograde, You haven't had a Mercury retrograde here, only in your seventh house. You did have it briefly last, what was that, February? The early part of 2025, and I've forgotten. And that was simultaneous with Venus going through. So you might want to recall how that felt for you from January through kind of March, April, when both Venus and Mercury were retrograding between your seventh and eighth house. There was some need for adjustment there too, but now it's like full on. But the North Node would have been in your eighth at that time too. So if this is about how you share intimacy, share resources, share what you share in terms of property division with siblings, for example, Mars rules the third, eighth house is, Mars also rules your eighth, and that's inheritance, division of property, who does the dishes, pick up your socks. This is that kind of thing in the eighth house, is how you interact with other people and what you receive from them and the values that you share with them. And that's full on change right now. One of the reasons that Virgo has that reputation for being there for everybody else and rescuing and so on is because Aries is in the eighth. You don't really receive a whole lot from others. You're the giver. You're the one who gives. And you've got Pisces in the seventh. So Aries is it's ruled by Mars. And when Mars goes through that eighth house, often there's a lack of support or a lack of receiving, or a lack of, let's put it this way, an inability to receive. Now, here's a good thing. Think of it in this way. How can I learn better how to receive through relationship rather than being the fixer, the giver, the martyr, the savior? How can I learn to receive? And this is your big life lesson with Saturn, Neptune, and your big life lesson with Saturn, Venus, which is actually really close, only that was the 8th of March, 2 degrees of Aries conjoining Neptune. Big life lessons here that are cyclical. They're changing the whole picture for you in so many ways. And so the month of March is helping you, maybe with that Mars, in a very helpful way to put new boundaries down. And certainly Mercury, Mars coming together, your ruler, and then Mercury on the North Node. This would be, if I were a Virgo rising, especially, or a Virgo sun and moon, I would definitely use this time to really clarify where I end and the other begins, and be really clear, and just take your territory and ask for help, ask for things, ask for support, ask for what you need, because often your disappointment, that Virgo sense of critical judgment, this disappointment in life, is coming from the fact that you're not asking for what you need. Mars rules your third house. You're very dodgy, cagey, secretive about what you need. You don't communicate openly so easily. This is not a personal accusation. This is the archetype of Virgo. So act upon it and ask for what you need. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. I'd need to see your personal chart. Jupiter is in your 11th. I think the whole point of this thing was the Jupiter in the 11th. In a favorable sign, it loves being in the 11th. It's the joy of Jupiter in the 11th house. And now Jupiter is direct. It's about your future. It's trinal to your 7th house and your ruler, and giving you huge opportunities for a new vision for the future, for new gains that can come through others, that can come through relationships, or that can come through business partners or property, because it also rules your fourth. And that Jupiter in the 11th is super for socializing once you get past the Mars on the North Node and Mars with Mercury. Be careful how you say what you need. Ask for it in a way. Maybe look up nonviolent communication on YouTube, and then ask for what you need. All right, I'm going to leave you there. And I wish you all the best for Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Right, so Libra, your ruler is, has just met up with Saturn in your house of relationship. She was also with Neptune, and that was on Saturday. And then on Sunday, the 8th of March, conjoined Saturn and started a whole new cycle. Saturn is your exaltation ruler, and Venus is your ruler. They're both pretty uncomfortable in the house of relationships. So it's an advantage for you in the sense that they work really well for you, but they're not particularly comfortable because it puts the energy in the sort of hands of the other. So you're going to get a lot mirrored back to you at this time. Um, be careful with the Neptune in the seventh, and this is for a very long time, till 2020, no, 2038. Saturn is there till 2028, April 12th. Be careful that you're seeing clearly who you're relating with, and be careful about, sort of rescuing or taking home strays and people who you feel sorry for, or beware of how you're projecting onto people things that are not necessarily true or real, or also personality traits that may not be there. Pay close attention to red flags in relationship for a while now. And that's true for anyway for Libra. It's always something you need to do, but especially now. But on having said that, you might meet somebody very important. You've got Jupiter in your 10th house, exalted, and that can be super for a really beneficial relationship, whether it's a love relationship, a one-on-one deep friendship, or a new business partner, a relationship that will bring you advantages and success in what you're doing, especially through your work, through your health, through your everyday life, as it's ruling that 6th house. And Jupiter rules your 3rd house of your local space, your extended family, siblings, your communication. Saturn rules your 4th house and 5th house, and it's in your 7th. So this new thing with your ruler Venus can also affect your emotional security or your feeling of security. Maybe you're finding that you're able to come to an agreement in relationship, or come to a new feeling around relationship that's working much better for you, that makes you feel more solid and secure. It could be quite literally a new love relationship. Saturn is the ruler of your 5th. That's love and romance for you, a new dynamic with children, if you have any, or if you want them, a new agreement around the story of children. Venus rules your house of marriage as well. So again, you might find that the 7th house is the partner, 7th house is the marriage relationship, and the 8th house is what you get from marriage. It's the 2nd house from the 7th, and it's how you benefit from marriage. You still have Uranus there. So there's going to be a lot of change still now until the end of April. But then Venus moves into that house, which is really favorable for you as of the end of March. So the 30th of March, your ruler moves into the 8th house. So whatever you're strategizing now, or planning with another person, or establishing now, it can bring you benefit. It can bring you some real results. Just be careful that you know who you're dealing with because of that Neptune. And I forgot to mention that in the introduction. Of course, that Neptune is a very big part of that story. It's that not only are there relationships that might be kind of thrown together in a way that's like, it's the best I can get for now or whatever, but it's also with the Neptune, it can be that things are not entirely clear. Ugh, there's so many things to say and so little time. Um, right. And so, of course, the Mars that's on the North Node or approaching the North Node around this time, and the Mercury that's backing into the North Node, and Mars around this time later in the week, that's all happening in your house of health and your work environment. And Jupiter is very helpful for you here at the top of your chart. So there's something favorable that can come from that, but it might require a major adjustment or a new way of channeling your energy, or because Mars is great in this, you want Mars in the 6th house. It's great there because it gives you courage. And when you are clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it, Mars on the North Node can give you this really strong new impetus for the new thing, what you're doing. And that's including that Jupiter that's ruling it in terms of your social status or your personal ambition, your work or your career, your vocation, and also social status includes, of course, marital status, how people see you, your reputation, and so on. So there's a lot that you can work with here. This is the house of colleagues as well. So there may be some new dynamic in relationships where you might find yourself kind of ready to read the riot act with some people. Do that if necessary. It's not going to be necessarily in your nature to do that as a Libra, sun, moon, or rising, but it can be very healing, very important to stake your territory, and that's part of the Saturn going through your 7th as well. It's like, this is admissible, this is not. You're in, you're out. I have no more time for you. And that's the tricky thing about balancing that Neptune, because Neptune can make you kind of go, "Aw, but they're so nice." just make sure you look at who you're dealing with and be clear of who they are. So lots to do with work and your everyday, maybe a new motivation for working out or a new motivation for taking care of your overall well-being as you find all this new energy of change, and including the Mercury retrograde, giving you reasons for doing things in a different way in your everyday life and including in your health sort of activities, like how you take care of yourself is the sixth house. Everything that allows you to do what you need to do to get through your day that supports your way of reaching out into the world is the sixth house, including overcoming problems. Mars on the North Node will help you overcome problems, but be clear whether it's your task to deal with or not. Jupiter will have you being visible. So if this is about a new status in career or a new role of having to be like a new kind of parental figure or authority figure or boss type figure, then this is also going to be very clarifying, very helpful for you. Right. I think I've covered it all, Libra. I wish you all the best. I'll see you in the next video. Mars, Sun, Moon, and sorry, Mars. Oh my goodness. Scorpio, ruled by Mars, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Mars is on the North Node within a couple of days of Jupiter stationing in your ninth house. Now, these are both trinal to you, so you can really be a powerhouse at this time. It's a great opportunity for you to really move forward on things that make you feel truer to yourself and your purpose and why you're doing what you're doing. And that can be a real creative drive as well, because Mars is in Pisces now. In your fifth house, it's with the North Node. You're kind of like, I'm focused on this. This is what I want. It can include the notion of having children, expanding your family. Jupiter rules both the fifth house, which is love and romance and creative self-expression, but also children. And Jupiter also rules your second house of family. And that's where we find the moon, which rules your ninth. So there can be something of a vision for expanding your family, expanding what you love to do, how you earn money through what you're doing. This can be a really significant opportunity to clear the air with a lover or a child, or about love relationships and children as a theme. If you do art, if you are an artsy type of Scorpio, this is a fantastic opportunity to really sit with yourself and say, am I doing the kind of art that I want? Is this the way I want to express that? Is there something in me that's calling me to a slightly different way of being? Like, am I now ready to be a, I don't know, painter instead of a sculptor, or a producer instead of an actor, or something like that? Mars rules your sixth house as well. And this is also, the fifth house represents what you do to express your happiness or to express yourself. And this is really very powerful right now in the middle of March, all the way through till Mars enters into your sixth house. But so much of the energy going forward is going to be there in the sixth house, ruled by Mars also, where you put a lot of your energy in terms of your everyday life, what the quality of your everyday life is going to feel like, how you manage obstacles and challenges and contracts and agreements with people. Saturn is in the sixth house of the legal stuff around the contracts, and the third house is the contracts. So this can also be about employment contracts or commitments that are important. It can be about health as well. So the fifth house and how you express yourself, keep in mind that we're always more healthy, we're always more well when we are fully self-expressed in a way that feels liberated, in a way that feels true to ourselves. And with Jupiter now direct in your ninth house of why am I here? What do I believe? What do I have faith in? What is my purpose? That is really going to be constructive for you finding that. And it's like, another way of expressing that is finding your voice. Jupiter rules the second house of your voice. Finding your voice and acting upon it, doing something with that. And that brings good health, because when you're in alignment with who you are and how you live your life, then health kind of is the result of that. You're not pushing against everything. You're not like struggling against your alarm or in the morning, or the fact that you have to do the job that you hate or whatever. This is the time in your life, not just now in March, but especially these days, to really decide, is this what I call life? Is this living? Is this who I am and why I'm here? Because then Jupiter will move into your 10th house as of the 30th of June, and it's coming up in a blink of an eye. That's really like 3 months away, basically. 3.5 months away. So you've got this opportunity now to really kind of take yourself seriously and say, is this what I want? Is this who I am? Is this what I want to express of my life? And keeping in mind, life is nasty, brutish, and short, and you as a Scorpio know that very well. And so if life is fleeting, then just do what you love. Do the thing, or do who you love, especially with Mars in the fifth. And do the thing that's important to you, coming from this place of your deeper expression of self. And with Jupiter in the ninth, it's going to bring you lots of opportunity to really see that clearly. Jupiter in the ninth is also teachers, your father or father figures that are guiding you, people counseling. And you might also decide you yourself want that role. You want to become that. And that again would come back to all that energy in your sixth house of what you do every day, including like the work you do every day. And that's also part of your self-expression. The self-expression comes from whatever it is that you spend your time doing, whether you're paid for it or not. But this might make you realize, actually, I want to be a counselor. Mercury is retrograding back to that North Node, back to your ruler Mars this week, or at least in a week, so on the 20th of March. But it's meeting up with Mars, your ruler, later this week. I think it's the 13th. And that is the Mercury that rules your 8th house of your deeper awareness of self. Mercury rules your 11th house of the future as well, where the South Node is. It's kind of like that old plan, that old thing that I thought was my future, or that I thought was so important, or that group that I used to hang out with that I thought was so important, or that belief that I had that drove me through society and how I wanted to belong to society. It's all done. It's so somehow just not me anymore. You already picked up on that really strongly when your ruler Mars was with the South Node last July, so 21st of July in 2025. So think back to that time. Now you're getting answers to those questions from last year. All right, I have to leave it there, and I will see you in the next video. Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Your ruler is now direct, and you will be relieved to know that it's going to bring you a feeling of, rather than this feeling of being a bit stuck and potentially even fearful or worried about your future, now you're getting to this place where you're starting to feel your way forward in a way that is important to you feeling solid and secure and grounded. Because Jupiter rules your 4th house, where all this action is happening in Pisces, and Mars is on the North Node 2 days after the station. So the actual station is the 11th of March. This is happening. It's just changing because I've changed the dials to put you on the 1st house. But this is happening on the 13th. So Mars meets the North Node on the 13th, and then Mercury backs up into Mars soon after that. So I think it's by the 15th, in fact, that they meet. And there's a lot happening in this space of a week that is really showing you where you are overcoming either fear, or you're overcoming feelings of being kind of uncomfortable, insecure, perhaps psychologically overwhelmed. And now it's coming to this place of, I get it now. This is what I need. This is who I need to be as I go forward with this new idea. Saturn and Venus have established a new relationship dynamic, or a new sense of drive and desire with a focus, with a plan, let's say, in your 5th house. And that was on the 8th of March. On the 7th of March, Venus was with Neptune. And that whole story of the Venus-Saturn is establishing something that can be lasting in terms of a relational dynamic, or in terms of something that's going on with your child. A new relationship dynamic with a child that requires a bit of perhaps distance, or the notion around having children that requires more effort or commitment or work. Obviously, children do in general, but even for some people, getting pregnant requires such a lot of effort and work. And this is a whole new cycle in that. So this might be for some of you who've been trying to become pregnant. This can be a really great opportunity. because Jupiter is now direct in your eighth house, and the eighth house connects, especially with the fifth house, connects to pregnancy. Remember, it's the result of relationships. It's the house of intimacy, and Jupiter represents pregnancy and children as well. So if that's what you're looking for, this is going to offer you a much, much better opportunity around that, or even in terms of your relationship dynamic around the children you might already have. Or just even if it's clarity, it's like I'm super clear now and I'm at peace with the idea that I don't want a family or I don't want children. Um, or my children need to leave home and I'm adjusting to this new relationship that I'm having with them. Because Mercury is retrograding in the house of home and family and mothering, and Mercury rules the 10th house where we find the South Node, and that's parenting. You know, how that's shape-shifting the way that you parent or the way you are being a parent or parenting your own parents. It's all changing as well. That's also the house of your profession. And Mercury in the fourth might be, as it's retrograding at this time and in a trine to Jupiter, where Jupiter is in that sign, the eighth house of other people's money and the money you might receive from clients, money you might receive from a marital partner, but also just how you feel intimately in terms of your more psychic or unconscious or subconscious self. That Mercury in the fourth can help you really decide, and especially with the Mars on the North Node, that Mars conjunct Mercury, is my job or the way I have to work, is this working for me? And how can I adjust myself in such a way that I feel better, more content, more, how can I find happiness in my life? How can I find stability in my life? And I think a lot of the message here, especially as Mars rules your 12th house of what is hidden from you or what is unconscious, what is spiritual, etc. And Jupiter rules the 8th house of fears and overcoming that, and what is occult or what is like what is mystical, what is not sort of out there, what is taboo even, and overcoming taboos. And you kind of realize, no, I have this whole new vision for what I need in terms of the work that I'm doing in such a way that I can feel happy and I can feel better about myself. Especially Neptune Saturn having just moved into your fifth, and that's the new cycle, 36-year cycle of Neptune Saturn in your fifth. You want to think in terms of how I express myself. And Mars is, of course, ruling that. And then, especially in April, when Mars moves in there, you'll get an opportunity to really take that sense of what I need to be happy and then express that, move it out there. And you'll find yourself in a place where you really are able to find your way forward in a new way of being you. And that's going to be easier when Jupiter moves up into the 9th house as of the 30th of June. And it stays there for over a year. There'll be more videos about that. So you do have a lot of really wonderful opportunities here to really feel your new way forward. And does your work align with that? Does your marriage align with that? Mercury also rules your marriage house, partnerships, clients. Do I have the right clients, or should I change the way I operate with clients? That's another way that can be. So all of these different things is a new way of showing up. Pluto in your third house says, be honest, be absolutely married to the truth. And this is something where Sagittarius functions very well when you're living from the highest place that you can. And to be in that place of high awareness, you need to be in your personal truth. And that's where Saturn and Neptune are helping you as well get to your personal truth. That means that there's no need to boast. There's no need to be big-headed. There's no need to be bossy, telling other people what to do. You just be you, and you do it with, unrelenting commitment to what is true for you and true in a general sense. All right, that's enough of that. Get down off my high horse, Sagittarius, and make the most of this, and I will see you in the next video. And Capricorn, this is a very important new beginning in terms of your relationship cycles, because Jupiter is now stationing direct in your house of relationship, and that includes business partners. So really significant, because at the same time, your ruler within days. So on the 8th of March, Jupiter stations on the 11th of March. This is moving because I've moved the dial for you to be on the first house. Your ruler Saturn had a new relationship agreement, commitment in your fourth house of what makes me happy, what makes me feel secure, what makes me bring, stability into my life. How do I feel that emotionally, psychologically? And they came together at the same time, a couple of days before Jupiter started moving forward in your relational sector. Equally, your exaltation ruler Mars in your third house, ruled by this Jupiter in the seventh house of partners, whether they be marital or business or whatever. Oh, and by the way, Venus rules your 10th house of your career and your social status and your personal ambitions and so on. So big, big, big new cycles for you, Capricorn. These are angular, very important parts of your chart, all being very strongly impacted exactly at the same time. Big plans. So again, think strategically. Mars is in the third house of willpower and contracts and doing the new thing. It's a new opportunity, but Mercury is still retrograde. So you probably want to stick around and wait for some details to clarify themselves. Because with the Saturn not in happy dignity, Venus is not in happy dignity in Aries, there can be a certain amount of expediency in terms of how you commit to relationships. And that's part of your modus operandi, Capricorn, because you always feel guilty about everything. So you're feeling like I should just get, suck it up and do this thing. But you have an opportunity to actually say, no, I don't want to suck it up and do this thing. I actually want to do the thing that's good for me. Your ruler is in Aries. It's in the house of you. And that's an opportunity for you to be more self-aware, taking control of what you need, fundamentally what you need to be happy. And again, that Jupiter is really benefic, so it might be your partner that is bringing something really good for you, or that in being in partnership, whether it's marital partner or business partner or with clients or something like that, that it's bringing you now a lot of benefit. But there's a need, because of that Venus renewal cycle with Saturn, there's a need for that to be reflecting something new that's coming through, especially because Venus rules that 10th, and that's part of your overall ambition and direction in life, whether it be your vocation or your sense of just personal ambition, what I want to be remembered for, what do I want to achieve. So there's a lot of really interesting dynamics here that you could really focus on, but perhaps just wait to take action on, including potentially wait till Venus is in a better dignity, both trinal to you because she'll move into Taurus, that's trining you from the fifth house, and she's a ruler of the 10th, so very important, but also she's going to be in that fifth house of self-expression where you feel now the Venus is taking shape and you know how to go forward with it. That will be on the 30th of March, so it's not that long from now that you can go in that new direction. So you can just let things sit. Now, watch your temper. Watch how you speak to people. Watch out for burning bridges because you might be feeling a little bit puffed up at this time. Also, because of the Jupiter in the seventh, you might be feeling a little bit exuberant or yeah, because Jupiter in the seventh can also release relationships if it's the right thing for you. That means you can release yourself from a contract. You can release yourself from a marriage, from a client, or any other type of relationship. And that's especially strong because of this new connection since the 8th of March that Venus and Saturn are establishing. Remember, Saturn is your ruler. And this might be just like, that's it, I'm done. I don't want this thing anymore. So be careful that, that is the decision that you want. Mercury will help you make that decision. So you might want to also wait until Mercury is through the retrograde phase, meaning it's direct as of the 20th and the 20th of March, and it's out of the retrograde cycle phase as of the 5th of April. And so you can give it a bit of time, even if you think, yeah, we're done here. And that might be very good, because Jupiter in the seventh, if it's not encouraging a new relationship, if it's not about this new, better thing, It's going to be good for you if the relationship comes to an end. You see? So it's not necessarily a negative thing if relationships end. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to us is a relationship ends. And again, we can also use the notion of the way of relating. So it's not necessarily a person, but it's a way of relating that can also be better from this point on. That's quite important. All right, I think that's kind of covering it. Jupiter also rules the 12th house, which is the house of undoing, self-undoing, as well as spirit, being closer to what you feel intimately is your spiritual self or dreams and the nature of intuition. That can be supportive as well. The moon there can be very helpful for you to figure things out. Jupiter rules that moon, and the moon rules Jupiter. So there's something about the 7th house and the Jupiter there that also might tie into intimacy. The 12th house is also bed pleasures. It's everything that goes on behind the closed doors or closed eyes, or it's too far away to see what's going on there. It can be international travel and trade as well. And Mercury is ruling your 9th house while it's retrograding. So there can be something here about education or travel that is also changing or coming through this new potential, this new idea, or new business partners, new trade, because 12th house is also trade with foreigners or like foreign trade, basically, overseas partners. Or online, because 12th house is also related to like things that are, they're not actually here, but you're dealing with them. But the 12th house is also loss. It's a house of loss. So again, that can come from the change in relationship and a realization of letting go. So it's not always loss in terms of what you don't want, but it's a letting go. So this can also be very important. What can I let go that is going to be to my advantage? All right, we'll leave it there. I need to see your chart to see more about that, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Aquarius, so you have a lot going on in your house of work and where you feel, now with Jupiter moving direct in your house of work, where you feel responsible for your health or where you feel responsible for your everyday work, how you want to reach out into that. I just want to point out that Jupiter retrograde, Jupiter station direct when the moon was in your 11th house. Let's see if we can catch that back by going back a day. Let's see. Does that still work? Oh, look at that, it works. Okay, so we're just going to call it this. This is Jupiter for Aquarius. So Jupiter is now direct. You've lost the title, but you get the gist here better. The moon is in your 11th house, which is ruling Jupiter, and Jupiter is ruling the moon. So what you're doing in your everyday life, there's a sense of things moving forward in a way that is connected to your vision for your future or how you want to feel your way forward in terms of either the vision that you have for what your future looks like or how you connect with people socially or society in general. And that can be very uplifting, can be very positive. And you also, your ruler, I work with the traditional rulers, your ruler, Saturn, is with Venus in a whole new cycle. As of the 8th of March, they conjoined in a new cycle. And that's in your 3rd house of communication, as well as siblings, as well as neighbors, neighborhoods, etc., cousins, stuff like that. And that is also the house of skill, using your skills, using your talents, and the things that you're gifted with. And Mars is also in the house of your voice or using your artistic, creative interests and skills. And that's ruling that Saturn and Venus together. So this can also be, as I've said in a previous video, an opportunity for you to really see what you've got to offer the world, and especially with Mars coming up to the North Node, feeling that you can really take action on it as a way of earning income. With Jupiter in your 6th house and all this energy combining the 2nd and the 3rd house together, this can be this possible new source of income, doing this new thing that is going to bring you to a new place. And especially because you have Uranus moving into your 5th house of entrepreneurship as well very shortly, that can be something that you might be working towards. And it's certainly in this world that we have now a really good way of finding stability in your life where it's been super unstable. Having Uranus in your 4th for 8 years, so since May of 2018. And Mars rules your 10th house of your career and your social reputation, and you are a go-getter in that. And it can be really beneficial for you to work alone, to work on your own, work in your own business or run your own business. Um, so Mercury retrograde is working through issues of money and values and finances and becoming clear around all of that as well. So this might be part of that dynamic, but it also in the second house represents family. Whatever brings you support. Generally speaking, when Mars is in the second house, there's not a whole lot of support coming your way. It might be you doing the supporting, but as Jupiter is now moving direct, it may feel less onerous. If that's true, if that's you doing the supporting, whatever it is, it feels less onerous. And Jupiter in the sixth can also move through health issues. Not to say that there are guaranteed health issues, but if there are any health issues, Jupiter will be helping you move through those health issues and finding a hope and optimism around that. Yeah, your third house is very busy, and that is also about a day-to-day busyness that combines with the Jupiter in the sixth. So I would say be careful of overdoing it. Be careful of adding on too many things on your plate. Having said that, of course, if there is a plan to work for yourself or to work in a way that is quite novel, and through your creative expression, especially as you can take advantage of that Uranus going into the fifth house of your self-expression and creativity, then you gotta be busy, right? You have to do work to get work and so on and so on. So just give yourself moments of rest and communicate your needs really well, because that's also the Saturn in the third house where you might feel that you find it difficult to speak what you need, and that can be grating. You can get into a bit of trouble with Saturn being maybe a bit too reticent to say what's necessary or just grumpy, and you might come across as a bit grumpy in the way that you connect with people. Venus there will help. But she's only there until the end of March. So just to say that Saturn lingering there is part of a bigger theme, and it's your ruler. So keep in mind that Saturn is ruled by Mars now until April 2028. And it's that Mars that's coming to the North Node along with Mercury that is saying now we have a new vision for both my relationship to wealth or money or possessions and my own value. And the second house is resources in a general sense. And this can be an opportunity for you to, again, to honor yourself and realize what a resource you bring to what you do. You're full of resourcefulness and you are your resource. And then Saturn in the third is that using that, it's skills and gifts and talents that you've come through with. So if you're feeling a bit low and you're kind of down on yourself, or you're not really feeling, and it'll perhaps take a while, feeling that optimism in terms of your day-to-day well-being or your day-to-day work, really just draw a list, like literally draw up a list and put all of those things that you've achieved and the things that you do well and the things that you know about yourself, that other people have commented and said, I'm so grateful, for you to do this thing or to be this way. Pluto has been asking you for 3 years to change who you are and how you show up, to become more authentic. It's like a no BS zone anymore, no pretending, no trying to fit in, no, just be yourself, be true to yourself. And it might come through crisis or a feeling of really being pushed with your back against the wall, but you have an enormous amount of support as you go forward into this year to really just show up and let your freak flag fly, as they say, and do the thing that makes you you. Jupiter now direct is helping with that. All right, good luck with that, and I'll see you in the next video. And whoopsie, when are we ever going to get there? Oh, what am I doing? I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm going day by day. This is why. Ah, la la, Pisces, I'm tired. Here we go. We're going hour by hour now. And then we put Pisces on the ascendant. So for Pisces sun, moon, or ascendant, this is a big deal that your ruler, Jupiter, which is trinal to you, very, very nice, is actually moving direct now. This can bring on a lot of creative inspiration, especially because it's trinal to Mercury in your sign. It's been trining the sun in your sign. If this is around your birthday time, particularly strongly, if this is from, let's say, the 7th, if your birthday, let's say, is this, well, actually, if your birthday is time, just forget it. If this is your birthday, it's good. It's all good. You're going to get benefit, but even more strongly so if your birthday is between the 7th and sort of the, I don't know, 15th of the month, something like that. But again, it comes with a caveat because there's a lot going on. Listen to the introduction to find out about that. So your Jupiter is your ruler, and it also is the ruler of your career and your social status, the 10th house where Sagittarius is, where the moon is at the time that Jupiter stations direct. And they don't see each other. So the fifth house of um, self-expression and pleasure and the things that you love and how you like to do it and the love relationships, the romance relationships and your children and all that stuff, it is not actually in alignment with the 10th house. So often what happens is Pisces has to compromise around their emotions, around what they love to get into that marriage or get into that career or get into that thing that the public sees. And this would be a direct expression of that, but it doesn't mean it can't work. It doesn't mean it's not the right thing. It just means that you'll find that there's a certain amount of adjustment that is necessary to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. And that might also come from a need to recognize with Jupiter in the fifth, the ruler of the first, that any self-indulgence is going to undermine your success. It's going to undermine your well-being. It's going to undermine your love relationships. And so Pisces often can be a bit self-indulgent or a bit woe is me, a little bit playing the victim card or playing the martyr. And that's part of the dynamic between Virgo and Pisces. And this trine can just be so comfortable and so lovely that then you miss the opportunity to take action. That would be a mistake. You need to keep on your toes and take action and move yourself forward as the momentum is building. I somehow don't think it's even going to be possible because Mars is on the North Node at this time. So there's going to be a feeling of push and pressure that launches you into whatever it is. But so bring it to your attention. Where is it that I want to be happy and expressed and still be working in a way that feels like this is part of my ambition? This is the relationship I want to be in. This is the person I want to be with. Mercury retrograde in your house of self, especially as it's going to conjoin Mars and conjoin the North Node in the next few days afterwards. Mercury is ruling the 7th house where you have your South Node. And so it's very clearly an opportunity for you to realize, well, there's some relationships that are just not working out. And I see now what I need to feel loved, to feel lovable, or what I need to give in order to be the right person for the relationship that I want. Mars rules the 9th house of your purpose. This is also super favorable because the ruler of the 9th in the first can have you really clear about what action to take based on why am I here? Why do I get out of bed? What's my life purpose? What do I have faith in? And that can also put you in the role of guide as well because Mars is there in the first house and you're the one guiding through a sense of higher purpose. But this is especially favorable with your ruler now in an exalted position and also direct. And that's until the 30th of June. What else, Pisces? Yeah, and of course, Saturn and your exaltation ruler, Venus, have just entered into a new relationship, a new cycle, new synodic cycle, as of the 8th of March. And that was at 2 degrees of Aries, your money house, your house of possessions and resources. I mean, for Pisces, you are the resource. It's Aries, but also it means that you can be a little bit impulsive around things like money. Not thinking, jumping in, and doing things, spending things a little too readily. So that can also be part of this new clue with Saturn and Venus, kind of like how to be serious about your money. This is anyway part of the Saturn cycle for you, all the more so because the ruler of that is in your first house of self. But Saturn with Venus is indicating that there is a new you, a new way that you're showing up in terms of your resources of all kinds. And that includes your self-esteem and your self-worth, as well as the worth that you put on things, the worth that you attribute to things, to possessions and things. Um, and Neptune is there, and that's part of the bigger Neptune cycle with Saturn. So you're anyway in this huge new cycle around your self-worth, around the value of things. This is what I was saying in the annuals for Pisces. This whole new cycle is relating to kind of like after all that Neptune, Saturn, and Pisces, it's like pulling that Piscean ideal or that Piscean way of living into the next cycle. And that becomes the way that you express, and that becomes a natural, more easeful way of being Pisces in a world that relates better to what Pisces is all about after this period of time. Being much more aware of our interconnected nature, being much more aware of our interdependency. And this is something that you can show, especially now in this moment where Jupiter is really saying, look, come out of who you are and how you are and show up in that way and go forward in that way. Jupiter in the fifth house is the house of intellect, as well as the house of, in Indian astrology, it's known as the house of mantra. So it's the knowledge and information that you came in with. And it depends what's in your fifth house, but there can be some new awareness. And that's also very true with the North Node in your first house, the Mercury retrograde and the Mars, etc., everything else that's been going through your first house, pulling up some new awareness, a new sense of what's important, and using that wisdom. The Jupiter in the fifth is with Sirius at this time that it's stationing, and Sirius is that star of wisdom. It's the star of using, being wise and expressing your wisdom, often hard won. And so this is a new opportunity for Pisces as well. Second house is also family, so there can be new relationships within family, and especially because Jupiter also represents children and pregnancy or parenting in general, and that's in the house of mothering, the sign of mothering, Cancer, and that's your fifth house. One of the reasons that Pisces tend to have a kind of a natural aptitude for children and parenting, being emotionally bonded easily. And so that can be also really positive for people who are establishing a family or having kids or dealing with children or in the life of your children. There can be things that felt a little bit stuck or unclear for your children, and then they also find more clarity and positivity as you go forward. And also one last thing, the Saturn with Venus in your second house also will affect your 11th house of the earnings or the money that you get from what you do in a new cycle, as well as the 12th house of your hidden experience, your spiritual life. It's a house of letting go. It's a house of loss, a house of what you spending money on things. And so there's a new cycle around that. The 12th house is also foreign lands, foreigners, what is hidden from you or what is unconscious to you. It's the house of dreams and stuff. And again, that will lead to some new cycle around your values and the value of things, but also potentially around family. Elder siblings is the 11th. Family is the second house, and Venus rules your third house of siblings, and Saturn rules that 11th house of siblings, elder siblings. So there can be something about an elder sibling, but also just siblings in general, or potentially a cousin or an uncle. And that's a new cycle with them or in their life. And that can be around relational dynamics or financial dynamics as well. But again, I'd need to see your personal chart. I think I've covered it. Pisces, I think we're there. Lots to say. I will be back with more things coming up as we go. And I'm so glad you're here. Thank you very much for liking and subscribing. And as I said before, I think I keep forgetting to say that. So all my subscribers are Pisces. But anyway, thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.